Good evening, friends. On behalf of Ahmedabad Management Association, I welcome you all in this second edition of CFO Forum and the Masterclass. So, on behalf of our President and Board, I welcome our dignitaries and speakers, Savan Bhai, Mr. Savan Bhai. Mr. Shailesh Tyagi, and Miss Amishi Kapadia. So I'm not a good speaker and good talker, so I'll directly jump on as an engineer does that on the subject, so that we are all here to hear their expert ideas and opinions. So I don't want to spoil your time and my time as well. So a brief about the ESG, and we all know that nowadays, all those big companies who are listed companies, they have to follow ESG. But down the line, it will be mandatory for all the limited companies as well as private limited companies to follow ESG. But it's not like a regulation where we should follow like what we follow all those government regulations. But this is like what you to imbibe within your organizations so that your environment, your social responsibility and governance happens within your organizations. And believe me or not, I'm running SMB organizations, but the governance, and I was talking to dignitaries down the line in the boardroom, that governance speaks a lot. So it's a basic fundamental. When we see a good governed company, we intend to work there or we intend to invest into that company. But normally we used to don't follow those governance rules within our organizations because we think that we are the promoters and we are the proprietors, so we can do whatever we want to do. But that's not a fundamental right thing which devaluate your corporate identity, which devaluate your intellectual property and devaluate your valuation in longer term. So that's one part of ESG, and second one is social responsibility. Nowadays, we think that whatever we earn, we just give to charity and let charity people, charity organizations do your work. But we intend to do something for our own people. Our own people means our own employees, your own suppliers, your support staff. So that social responsibility and another social responsibility is how you can prevent our environment, and that how environment comes into picture. So I'll not speak much about all those things. I'm not an expert. But these are the a few things which are very important, and I'm thankful to all of you that you participated in this very important master class, so that we can send those information down the line in the society. This is the second edition, as I told earlier. First edition was a master class on merger and acquisition and how you can successfully run or exit your venture. And Savan Bhai is expert in M&A. So at that time, we had a really nice participation like what we had today. Around 100 plus participants were there in June 13th. And this is the second edition for CFO forum that we are conducting, that ESG compliance and reporting. So I'll introduce our distinguished panel and guests, and we'll share, and then Savan Bhai will take over the mic. Happy to introduce Mr. Shailesh Tyagi. He leads the climate change and sustainability offering at Deloitte South Asia. He came from Australia, and nowadays he stays in India. He has over 2.5 decades of hands-on experience in domain with more than decade experience, being instrumental in establishing successful advisory services for the Big Four, including the biggest pure play sustainability consulting firm in Australia, New Zealand, and in India. He has also played a key role in supporting Deloitte Sri Lanka, Thailand, Indonesia, and Singapore practices. His experience spans fugitive emissions in energy and resources, tech-enabled ESG solutions, and creating business cases for sustainability. He has also contributed significantly to global initiatives like TCFD and India's first sustainability assurance standards, while also balancing his passions for fitness, taekwondo, and family. We can see his physique, so he's so strong and fit that we should also, and like Savan Bhai. Welcome, Mr. Shailesh. Our another guest, I've been told that she's, though she will talk about sustainability, but she's one of the leading personality when it comes to IPO. So Miss Amishi Kapadia, partner of Deloitte India, brings nearly 3 decades of dynamic leadership in investment banking and capital markets. She has a strong track record in advising CXOs on strategic funding needs, raising approximately INR 300,000 billion through equity and debt for corporates. Previously, as joint MD and CEO of Yes Securities, she established and led a successful merchant banking division. Her insights of capital markets and fundraisings are widely respected in media circles. Passionate about sustainability, she initiated a dedicated future mobility vertical to harness India's fundraising potential. She holds an MBA in finance from India and a master's in international finance from SIPA, Columbia University, New York. With additional studies in sustainable finance from the University of Cambridge, UK. So welcome, Anishi. Last but not least, मुझे बहुत 2 ही लाइन का लिखा हुआ है, but multifaceted personality, Dr. Savan Godiawala. He is current president of IIM-A, and degree એટલી બધી છે, but extremely humble person, and he has done a PhD, CA, LLB. He is visiting professor at IIM Ahmedabad and IIT Gandhinagar, and one of the angel investors and startup mentors. It's not just startup, it's also mentors for many corporates and people like me. So thank you, Savan Bhai, and welcome. So I'll give mic to Savan bhai.
Yeah, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, Jaimin bhai. Dear Shailesh, dear Amishi, thanks for coming, and certainly I'm certainly I'm privileged to share the dais with you. One important thing, of course, that when Jaimin bhai was introducing Shailesh, that we have to see him and then his physique. The first thing that I came over here and then separated the chairs a little bit, because just in the fear that the shoulder of this gentleman doesn't hurt me sitting next to me. But fabulous. He is the example of sustainability. He's going to stay 100, 200 years for sure. So that's the first sustainability of his life. You have to see his regime from morning 5 up to evening and his food habits. So yes, your charity begins at home, right, Shailesh? So he does what actually is sustainable in every which way, and certainly as business also. So once again, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining. This is CFO Forum series, second lecture of the series. First of the series was M&A. We are going to have the third in the series, which is second Thursday of August. Second Thursday of August, and we'll be announcing what topic we are going to bring in, and certainly we'll also ensure that we'll have one guest speaker at least to come in to speak on that topic also. So very happy to be a faculty over here, but important is that the participation. I was looking at the profile also, and I'm very happy that there's a finance background and finance people, ESG, because a lot of people have always been thinking that ESG is more about the technical, commercial, and CEO role than the finance role. But we were thinking about it, and we were very clear. Shailesh's team also had done a program, CFO program at Deloitte in Ahmedabad, which I only led at that time, and we were very happy to see a lot of CFOs in the room also. So I will give a 10-minute, 12-minute a bit background of what CFO's role and ESG is about, but then certainly we are very keen to listen to the speakers. And Amishi, certainly from the point of view of what can be the green in capital aspect that we can do for sustainability. And certainly CFOs would be very keen to know on the green aspect of the as a role for sustainability. So if green revenues or green bonds and green capital can be raised, that would be, and there are so many funds, including the sovereign funds also, who would look at such capital. So what is the role of ESG, and where do I come from? I am a finance background. I am not Shailesh or Jaimin bhai, who are technical guys, engineers kind of, or technical people. But finance, but I am involved quite a bit. I get call from so many CFOs. One example that I would like to give you is a BRSR reporting, the business responsibility and sustainability reporting. And we have some clients who currently need to have that whole lot of, right now it is rolled out to, if I mistake not, 1,000 companies in India, but it will certainly naturally go on at a much lower level. It will level up to the MSMEs also sooner when it comes to reporting standards. So CFO's role in the first place is certainly, before the role of CFO, as ESG, and Shailesh, I am of the view that these are policies that are coming in for rolling out ESGs because of the climate change issue, and then all the UNFCCC thinking. But that these policies will sooner have to become philosophies. It cannot be policy that I have to do this, I have to do this, I will then do it naturally. If that becomes habits, then probably this all the climate change or ESG will work better. And this is not just about climate change, this is also about what Jaimin bhai mentioned, the ethicality of the things also, it's governance also, which is very, and it has to be a way of life, it has to become a philosophy, but probably enforced and then converts into habit. So policies then convert into philosophy in the long run. And CFO has a very, very important role to play. Firstly, the financial decisions. The ESG doesn't happen like that. There are commitments, there are obligations, and then the CFO will have to do the financial decision making and policy making for every of these ESG decisions that are taken. Because most of the decisions are treated as if they are cost centers. But then CFO can make them profit centers. And I can tell you, I can relate to some of my conversations with the CFOs in the past, that the issue which is coming up to CFOs are that their vendors, or rather their customers more than vendors, the stakeholders at large, are now questioning them on what are they doing on their carbon footprints. Now, this is then converting from the cost center to a business decision, that what I am investing is converting into reduction of carbon footprints, is converting into business for me, because that multinational customer of mine is now wanting me to fill up a form even when I'm not a BRSR supposed to be reporting entity, that what did I do? And if I do that, I'm killing the competition who are not doing something that I am doing. So here is the man who is the CFO or the finance man in the system, who will make the plan report internally more than externally, that this is 1, 2, 3, 4 that we have done, and this is the 5 benefits that my guys or the leaders of the company that you can do. So very important that we have to be proactive. We cannot be waiting for some government policies to be asking us to employ ESG, and that is where the big role of finance here, because finance fellow will have to convert and understand that how can I convert this into a business decision, and the right thing to do as a business thing to do, not just right thing to do just for the point of view of climate change only. And naturally the climate and other social aspects certainly gets benefited out of it. The big responsibility comes, one, as I said, reporting. Another is risk management. Certainly there are risks, and ESG is very important. Now risk in so many companies that we have been seeing, there are no payroll at all in the whole lot of factories. Now as a social part of the ESG also, I will have to find out what is the risk of not having anybody on the payroll. Everything is contracted. Will it harm my company from the point of view of a risk that I will be talking to my investors or my capital or my even the customers and vendors that okay, everything is contract? Or there could be a situation where I am employing people which are, maybe I am utilizing them 10 hours in an 8-hour shift. And then there is an issue of a risk which also comes in. So the policies that the CFO would enter into, and they say that I have a risk of reporting, or I have a risk of somebody coming, and even my auditor can raise a question as an internal auditor, or that there is not the right thing which is happening in this. So governance, of course, well, listed companies, SEBI is handling, clause 49 is there and many things. But more than governance, this is something which we'll have to go to percolate down from proactively thinking on the risk aspects. And the best person suited for the job is again the finance man. The CFO will be able to understand better that how, and there's a ESG lady advocate who is that the legalities of the possibility of taking ESG lightly, because it is not something where I am mandatorily required. Even at a MSME level also, certainly at the larger companies, there is no choice about it. So this is one aspect where I see CFO has a big role to play, more than any other leader in the organization, they will. The bigger role even that I am seeing this new world is the stakeholder management. Every single stakeholder that you are, that is related to your company, if they are not asking today, within the next 1 or 2 years are going to ask you the first question before the product and the pricing. They are going to ask you about the carbon, that what is happening in the organization. That could be your vendor that you will be asking because your customer is demanding. It could be your investor. Investor says, sorry, I am not going to, the gentleman said, by value of the business, my valuation would have an impact, maybe 10, 15, 20% if you are compliant or you are proactive or you were doing something which is more than recommended or mandated. So these valuations, my investors are going to ask, the equity, my shareholders, my promoters, my directors. When one new animal in the story is an independent director. I sit on the board and there is no discussion. I ask this question simply, what did we do in the last quarter so far as ESG is concerned? Can you in every single board meeting have one slide on this? I religiously ask this question on my boards where I am an independent director. And nobody in the system, and CFO is supposed to answer to me when I'm asking this question. And nobody in there's one more angle which has come out to the bankers. The bankers, even your funding bankers, I'm not talking about the capital aspect. The funding bankers, the banking system is going to start asking you, what are you doing? Because the banking auditor is going to ask, investors are going to ask the bank also, that how do you do your credit appraisal? And this is going to be such an important thing. So all percolates to, we see that, oh, this is a cost. I am adding cost. CFO is under burden, that where would I bring the money? The purchase fellow is asking for money. The marketing fellow is asking for giving credits. And the CEO is asking for investing in the operations and expanding. And then here, I am here as wanting, where do I invest from ESG? He will have to make a business case, and this is a simple, straightforward business case without any, if we can make this understand and give this perspective and understanding to the leaders in the organization, and ultimately it will percolate to not only doing good for the world, which now, one more stakeholder that I'm missing out is employees. It feels so good when an employee comes in and he sees that we are in a green building and office. If they see that, okay, we are doing zero discharge, they see that, okay, we are not polluting an iota of anything, this employee will be happy to come to you as a preferred employer with a 10% less than the next competitor also to you, if you are, showcasing yourself as any. And that also is something that CFO will have to showcase, that, okay, this is what we have been doing, this is the investment we have done, and this is what we are giving as the environment, more from point of view of satisfaction and future. Most of the employees are much younger, and they know that we have to live here 20, 30, 40, 50 more years. What will happen if my organization is not caring about the world at large? So wonderful. Ultimately, this, thank you again, Shailesh, Amishi, for coming. And as Jamin Bhai mentioned, I see ESG about is creating wealth. I look at it as a pure business case. My valuations have to be much higher if I am an ESG conscious company. That's where I'm coming from, the philosophy more than a policy. I don't call it a ESG compliant company. Compliance, so no choice about it. But we have to be conscious. It has to get into the DNA. The fellows coming in the room should know that I don't need this light, I don't need to switch it off. Or I go out, I should need to switch this off. It cannot be enforced. It should become a philosophy. As simple as that. Thank you once again, and so happy to have the experts. I want them to be speaking more, and we're going to get something hugely in terms of learnings that we'll take home today. And certainly, please do give your feedback, and we will look forward to you for the third in the series CFO Forum happening in the second week of August on a Thursday, second Thursday. Thank you very much. So, over to Shailesh, and wherever you want.
Yeah. So while we are presenting, I hate wasting everyone's time. So first of all, thank you for coming. Right? I always joke about sustainability is something I can do, but surprisingly, sadly, that's the only thing I can do. Either I can drive an Uber and pick my big brother or Amishi from home and drop them, or I can work in sustainability. I can't do anything else, surprisingly. But the journey on sustainability, I would like to start while we present how it started, right? It basically started in a very funny manner, guys, literally, because I'm a mechatronics engineer, right? And my dad retired as a CEO and a director of a big company. Typically, I called him up one day and said, hey, Dad, in my thesis, Kyoto Protocol, carbon will be a commodity. This is the field I want to work in. And he said, literally, I'm not going to finance your further studies, Shailesh. I said, why? I don't want you to work for an NGO and plant trees. And he was serious. I'm like, it was 1998. And I'm like, okay. All right. Then I financed my MS, my MBA. I did another degree from MIT. Why? Not because I love studying, because this space needs expertise. This is not about, I really like what Savan mentioned about compliance. It's about understanding. My last qualification was similar to why I have an expert in Amishi, sustainable finance degree from INSEAD. You know why? Because I was working in this space. Not to raise funds, that's Amishi's expertise, and she's going to talk about it. It's about helping clients that if you improve your ESG performance, what it means for cost of capital. So think about a scenario, a company, large PSU, I've worked with them for 3 years, improved their ESG performance. Their director of finance calls me up and say, hey, Shailesh, come in and present on ESG. I'm like, yeah, happy to. He said, no, don't give your usual presentation. Present to me, and I can name it was IOCL, and I presented to all the PSUs, director of finances in Missouri. He said, no, present on sustainable finance. How I can refinance my debt. Now I have improved ESG performance, right? And that's exactly we're going to hear from this panel. The other thing is, but how many of you really understand sustainability? But I just want to simplify it, what it really means, right? How many of you really understand sustainability? Sir, please. Right. I can hear you, sir. Yeah. Yeah, no, sure. No, absolutely. And that's exactly what I studied at the uni. So basically the definition is very simple. It's defined. Yes, sir, please.
Think about the generation of the future, whether they would be able to survive and get resources the way in which we are enjoying today. So we are free to expand, we are free to grow, but not at the cost of the future generation.
100%. So, exactly. Now, do you know who came up with this definition? John Elkington. And he came up with this, meeting the needs of the present without compromising the needs of the future. Right? Simple. And that's exactly what we talked about. Yeah, please.
I'm also saying that Gandhi is also talking about his philosophy is about sustainability.
Absolutely.
जरूरत से ज़्यादा कुछ भी आप रख रहे हो तो वो sustainability से मैच नहीं करता है.
No, mental peace, I guess.
Yeah, वो गांधी जी की philosophy थी.
Yeah. So when we look at this sustainability from this lens, and I really wanted to, this is my way of waking people up, right? Because presentations, I call it death by presentation, PowerPoint, right? Right. But 3 things here. What is sustainability from the business lens? This is great, very nice. 3 messages. 1, what has happened over the years when I studied at the uni, and I'm 47 now, I'll be 47 in August. And now the definition of sustainability has changed. John Elkington was on the board of a company, and I was talking to him directly, and I was an MD in that, and he told me that definition is no longer valid. I have a homework for you guys. When you Google it, just type ISSB, definition of sustainability. That's the new definition of sustainability. Old one is no longer valid. Why? I tell you why. Though it's valid, it's not applicable to businesses the way Savan mentioned. Savan bhai mentioned it so well. The investor pressure, value chain, operations, human capital. And if I really want to put what Savan bhai said in words for a business, it goes like this. And trust me, I did it once with my son. My son, and we live in Sydney, from year 9 to 12, he runs the sustainability program in his school. And he asked me, Dad, what is sustainability? You know what I told him? I said, it's very simple, bete, right? He understands Hindi, thankfully. You need money to run a business? He said, yes. That's financial capital? He said, yes. Companies have chartered accountants. Sam's dad is a chartered accountant. He said, yes. Okay. But then you need people, isn't it, Mike? He said, yes. Human capital. You want to keep them. You want to keep them happy. Employee retention, right? Attraction, right? But then, how this program would have happened if I didn't have relationships? Savan bhai didn't have relationship, right? If Amishi didn't have relationship. We are here because social capital. Think from a business angle. Suppliers, customers, right? You need those. How will you attract capital, investors? How you will comply with regulatory requirements? That's social capital. So S is done. S is human capital, social capital. Governance is financial capital, corporate governance, and then ESG governance. I'll come to that. And then environment, common sense. Today, we had 3 cars. I cancelled one. Sir parked his car somewhere, Piyush, my colleague, and we came in Amishi's car. Carpooling, common sense. Lowering the impact is common sense. And we have been doing it forever, right? So that's environment. E, managing the impact. Because they are creating positive value, like Savan bhai is creating positive water footprint. And I'll keep coming to this because I'm super impressed with what he is doing. It's positive water footprint. Yes, you can do it. But its impact, you're consuming water, making negative impact, energy consumption, greenhouse gas emissions, pollution, but you have to manage. Honestly, that's sustainability. If someone tells you what is sustainability, running a profitable business, keeping people happy, understanding my value chain, my suppliers, keeping regulators happy, and managing my impact, knowing the positive impact and negative impact, externality. That's all it is. So it's not about planting trees. It's about planting billion trees and making a business case out of it. If you plant 100, that's CSR. Right? Please understand this, and I would like to start and think about this particular event, how we did it. That's sustainability. And this concept is why I work in this space. Because I understand the whole world is focusing on financial capital. Who is really focusing on human capital, social capital, and natural capital? Right? That's the other three pillars. Right? All right. So now to put order into this in terms of what is ESG, how the regulatory landscape has evolved, how you embed, which Savan bhai covered, how you really embed that into your business landscape, operational and value chain, sustainable finance, absolutely, and not even one company in India have the level of experience in issuance of blended finance, sustainability-linked loans, green bonds like we have in Amishi, and I wanted to maximize that. So we'll bring that. You cannot work in sustainability if you don't understand technology, and I'll give you ample examples of that. Literally, tech-enabled ESG solution. That's exactly what tech ESG is all about, right? And then open to any questions you have. Right? That's the way we're going to run it. And please stop me anytime if you have any questions. So look, you see a lot on that slide. And why? So one thing I do, every time we present, I give full freedom to my team to put whatever they want to put on the deck. I never guide them. And I tell you why. If I see one of the smartest manager I have in my team, I won't embarrass him by taking his name, literally, said the first slide would be climate change. I said, okay. I didn't ask him why. I tell you why. Climate change is #1 challenge for our world, for our businesses. The #1. Half of my life I spent in proving climate change is happening. And the other half, I'm trying to tell companies, please understand the physical impacts on your installation and energy transition impact. Energy portfolio is changing. How you're going to really procure energy, and how you're going to manage your emission towards net zero. And I'll come to that. That's climate change. What exactly is there on that slide, if you ask me? So in my intro, you saw TCFD scenario panel, right? What is that TCFD? So Michael Bloomberg, and as part of Financial Stability Board, they understood long back that we really need to understand the stranded assets, the concept of stranded assets. Right? And what it is. They said, we really need to understand where the money from banking institution or banks is going, where investors are investing. And simple concept, I'm going to oversimplify it, allow me. And I want returns. Imagine a scenario, I'm expecting from an asset X returns over 30 years. But climate change is happening, carbon tax is coming directly, indirectly. It's there. In Australia it was there. Other, you can say, internal carbon pricing is coming, and then carbon tax is posed on us from Europe, and we'll see all those regulations. So how you really link that to the return of your asset, right? And that's already happening. Or financing in some countries for fossil fuels. Very difficult to get. All that is happening, right? Do you understand the impact around it? So how you calculate? You calculate like this. What is net zero? Global warming or global boiling, right? Now it's global boiling. And we got this, our house is on fire from one of the recent articles from Amishi. That's linked to global boiling. And what is global boiling? We wanted to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees below pre-industrial levels, right? What it is. Please think about, if you want to limit to 1.5, there's a global carbon budget. Sectors have certain budget, countries have certain budget, your company has certain budget. That's science-based target initiative approach. There's science-based approach. There's nothing we can come up, it's a science-based, very simple mathematics and calculation. With that, you do scenarios, like a waterfall diagram. You go to a company and say, if you talk to companies you are linked with, your value chain, doesn't matter which size. First is energy efficiency. Low-hanging fruit, renewable energy, in different scenarios like battery, energy, storage, and others. BESS. You talk about EVs and all. Then you look at new energy, green hydrogen, you have heard, right? New energy, carbon capture. Then you link into carbon market solution. So that's the way you look into the overall net zero. And you achieve 1.5 degrees and you implement. But what if you can't do 1.5? What will happen if it's 4-degree rise? Which people are, my team says it will be 4 degrees. I'm like, okay, I won't be alive by then. But it's 4 degrees, right? But how you calculate, that's exactly this slide is all about. Is it really late? The other aspect, if you see, Deloitte did amazing report called Turning Point report that links to GDP loss and productivity loss. How your workers' output will reduce because of extreme heat. We all know that. How we have seen the heat, right? Already how it's working. Not in India, everywhere. But see the amount of 35 trillion potential US, we are talking about US, you know, here, loss in GDP. And that report, I would like you, there's a link here, I would like you to definitely read. It links to your GDP and productivity. So that's the purpose. Now, I've already explained ESG the way I explained to a 14-year-old or 13 last year, right? But is it so simple? Is it sustainability so simple or ESG so simple? Yes and no, and I tell you why. When I meet the new age ESG experts, they tell me, oh, BRSR has these indicators and this indicator, principle 7 talks about this. I say, yeah, everyone knows it. I don't have much respect. If you quote me that, you know, that's easy. Why would I remember? It's in Google. Why would I like to remember? You need to understand that principle is about transparency and openness of business, principle 1, or links to age-old water, or energy, or diversity and inclusion. You need to understand. And then you need to link for us here, for our, say, value chain, or for the CXOs who make the decisions, or small and medium sector, what's relevant for me? Where the pressure coming? And the pressure is coming from the angle of compliance. And Savan, as you said, you have to comply with that, no matter which country, right? I used to sit from 2010 with the CEOs of the largest Australian companies and sign a report called IIM-A, NGER, Energy Consumption, Energy Production, Greenhouse Gas Emissions. Mandatory reporting, most complex reporting in the world is fugitive emissions reporting in energy and resources. Because that has to be, the numbers have to be accurate, right? The same result should come, so repeatable manner, right? So it has to be accurate, it has to be complete, the concept of audit, right? Completeness and accuracy and everything. I used to sign it. CFOs and CXOs were there, role of CFO, and we'll come to that. But imagine they have to report that under BRSR core and how it links to you. Are you ready to provide that information to the level of accuracy? Because why? We may not have the same level of scrutiny as in Australia, but we have a reasonable assurance requirement on certain parameters. And we understand it's an audit. We are not talking about review, limited assurance. So more and more governance, process and data governance will come in. And if you see, I mean, look, I can talk about this graph the way I want, but ultimately this is talking about a very macro level. How many of you may have seen, even before you knew sustainability, UN millennial goals, right? You go to any petrol pump and you see millennial goals. And I say, okay, poverty, alleviation, education, right? That's exactly our SDGs. Now there are 17 sustainable development goals. Because at the end, this is all common sense. We need to take the economy to a certain level, and you start at a very macro level. So you know what companies do? I remember, I've seen the evolution of sustainability. I don't even use the word net zero. I see a robust greenhouse gas emission management reduction plan leading to neutrality or leading to net zero. Doesn't matter. But ultimately, as long as you understand your greenhouse gas emissions, you reduce them on a yearly basis, perfectly, it can lead to whatever. Fancy terms keep coming, right? But you need to understand. Same way, companies will call me and say, Shailesh, we have done a lot in sustainability. Can you link to 17 SDGs? Our initiative, measure the progress and report. That SDGs. But that's very macro. Big ticket items, right? But when you look at greenhouse gas emissions, and I love the fact that Amishi mentioned this slide should be here to my team or our team. or the team which put together, to be precise. Every time I present, I define scope 1, 2, 3, and 4 once for all. Like I defined what sustainability is, so no one talks about planting trees, right? It talks about what really is running a successful business. What are scope 1, 2, and 3, 4? It's nothing to do with ESG. It's greenhouse gas emission related terms. And what it is, when we started reporting greenhouse gas emissions in the world, 2008, and I can quote these clients, the first bank in the world which became carbon neutral was Westpac in New Zealand. And luckily I was working on that project. I was fortunate to be there. And ISO 14641, Greenhouse Gas Protocol, it's basically a reporting framework. You report scope 1, scope 2. Scope 3 was not there then, and I'll come to that. That's a beast. But scope 1, imagine I own a thermal fired power plant. I buy the coal. I get proximate ultimate analysis on the coal properties. Sorry, an engineer always get into those, but ultimately I buy the coal. I know calorific value and the coal content in it. The emissions related to that, greenhouse gas emission, because I'm paying, right? So I understand the coal properties. Otherwise, why would I pay the calorific value? I can calculate greenhouse gas emission, that's scope 1. Because I'm buying the coal for my boiler. Scope 2, energy from the grid, which I'm not buying. But I'm using. It's a common grid. That's scope 2. Scope 3. For this, Amishi hired a cab. I came in that cab. That's scope 3, to simplify. That for this event, we didn't take it to, though I really like the Zen garden, so I can always say it for the Zen garden, but on a serious note, we came here, scope 3. Think about some of you, now, say, An comes up, he's a smart guy, he comes up with a software which reduces emission in its use throughout the life cycle. It's scope 4. You come up with a product which reduces emission in its use, it's scope 4. So once for all, I thought I'll define it because people use it for sustainability. They would say in sustainability, I spoke to my scope 3 value chain. No. Scope 3 are indirect emission, outside your boundary, right? And for that, we have categories and all. So enough guidance is available. Old school. It was forever. But it's very difficult to capture that because you have to go to your value chain, basically you. Come to you and say, provide me this information. And that has to be of somewhat quality so that they can report further and get assurance on, ultimately. Right now, it's not mandatory. They said it's mandatory, but it's voluntary, but it will be mandatory. I don't even care about voluntary or mandatory, to be honest. You have to report. You're not going to give information just like that. You're going to make sure that if I'm going out of my mailbox, it has to be accurate. So what are the drivers, right? And some of it was covered by Savan, absolutely. But I tell you my experience. You see things on the slide, but I tell you how I have seen the drivers, literally. When sustainability first came, it was a lot about environment, health, and safety. Late 90s. Literally, it was EHS. I'm doing a World Bank project. It's funded. I'll do a due diligence, certain performance, soil properties, samples taken, and you meet the requirements, right? Came early 2000. Climate change came, and people wanted to make money out of climate change. So one country will have emission trading scheme. India will have supply of carbon credits in CDM. We have joint implementation, basically Kyoto flexibility mechanisms, right? And you have a carbon market working, global carbon market working. Why? People didn't like it, but the concept was pretty good. Climate change is a global problem. I emit here or I emit in Sydney, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? But the smog is here, not in Sydney. So we need to do something about it, right? So how about I do something here to reduce that smoke, right? As an example, though it's not greenhouse gases, it's pollution. But still, think about it. We reduce, and we take the credits and claim somewhere else. Doesn't hurt. That's the carbon market, right? That happened. Then people realize, oh, you're not doing enough. You're just buying credits and meeting the requirements. That's easy. I won't do anything, and so I give an example. L'Oreal. I was working for L'Oreal, and they don't have big operations, warehouses in Australia, right? They wanted to become carbon neutral. And straight away they said, in one breath, we are not going to buy carbon credits. We want to do something in-house. We're going to have solar panels on warehouses, and then we will procure green power. Right? So this is the way world has evolved. But now it's most complex. Because now when we look at, number one, regulations. You have to report. And it has to be of some quality. Regulations, compliance. Then companies really want to minimize the harm minimization, the second step. Management system in place, right? So that you make sure reputational risk. And these are real. I'm telling you, I've seen in 2015, I won't name the client, but a journalist called me in Sydney. I landed in Melbourne, and he called me and saying, "You work with this?" I said, "Why? For this bank?" What do you think about stakeholder activism for this bank? I was like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I'll come back to you." So I did give the interview later on, but I Googled and realized few stakeholders have sued this bank for not reporting adequately on climate change. Right? And if you type the word stakeholder activism, you know what I'm talking about. Right? So those things happen. I'm like, okay, all right, fair enough. So that push has come. So you need to reputational risk, right? So different kind of risk, resilience and everything came in. Then value add. Unilever is a classic example. This company really knows how to make money out of sustainability. I can take numerous examples, right? But Unilever is something I've always looked at, how to make money out of sustainability, right? So this pyramid of compliance, harm minimization, and value add, that's the way companies progress on sustainability. But it's a journey. When someone calls me, I'm in 3 years in India now, and whenever I meet a company, I give them a 3-year cycle, right? And we'll see how we go about it as well. But that's essentially is. And drivers, the other is investors. Investors are pushing, absolutely. Why they are pushing? When I do due diligence for the big players, private equity firms, first question they ask, Shailesh, can you tell me SASB, Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, materiality requirements for this industry, what it is? The message is there's enough guidance available. They know what they're looking for as a starting point. SASB has 77 industries related materiality aspects. You start with that. For this sector, these are typical important areas. You start your due diligence around those, but you explore when you do stakeholder engagement. But investors want full understanding of ESG liability. Absolutely, right? You don't want to buy an asset, like stranded asset concept, carbon liability, right? Carbon liability for companies can be in billions. Trust me. We do those a TCFD assessment and physical risk, transition risk, and really quantify that it's massive, right? So those things are happening. So investors really want a good picture. And finally, societal pressure. Rather than explaining what it is, I'm so proud of Deloitte's millennial survey. It's called millennial survey. We do it every year. What Gen Z, Gen Y talk about sustainability, that report defines it so well, right? So I'm no longer in Gen Z and Y, even millennial, but let's not go there. But it's cool how they look at sustainability. You will realize they refuse to join companies, right? They refuse to join. Today's I was telling Amishi, I have examples of kids in NYU, lawyers, joining me because they're following me on LinkedIn and joining. And I was like, okay, but people, you know, I mean, I'm big fan of people, the next generation, you know, they understand. They're doing a better job than me at least. All right. So what are different regulations? Now, you've given us an opportunity. I thought I'll talk about regulations, though it is what it is, right? But how these regulations have evolved, right? So look, these regulations ideally look at 4 areas. You will see terms like business responsibility for sustainability reporting, right? That's overall ESG reporting. Or you will think carbon border adjustment mechanism. Bhaiya, I am getting stuff from you, I am providing stuff to you. In my geography, carbon is a big liability. People have to take into consideration everything. You're doing nothing about it. Pay a carbon tax. I'm not going to take your stuff because we have to have a level playing field. That's CBAM, right, in Europe. Or Sustainable Finance Directive. On sustainable finance, there's another directive in countries, right? The other directive is, think about something called CSRD, Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. One of the highlight of that is, in Europe, double materiality. So a lot of companies are coming to us and saying, do double materiality. I simply put together, think about this, what double materiality is. I can go into the detail and all because you're doing so much work in that space. But what it is this. What's important to the company, what's important to the value chain, and where you make the maximum impact. That's spider web, right? You create. And impact has also come in BRSR. So what I'm trying to say, these all are linked. BRSR is an interoperable standard that has taken into consideration all these requirements. Australia, very strong on carbon and energy. Very, very strong because of energy and resource intensive industry. Australia also had the first country in the world to go for reasonable assurance requirement. So what really happened in Australia, and the emissions carbon tax was abolished, government change happened, but they were scared their commitment will be surpassed, right? So they came with safeguard mechanism. And if you have more emission, get a reasonable assurance on that number. So at Deloitte, and I was the partner on it, so quite proud, the Glencore, the first ever reasonable assurance audit we did, I led it. I remember, very complex in that space, but in India it has come now, right? Reasonable assurance. So all those things are interlinked and are coming to companies. One thing we don't have there is greenwashing, right? The greenwashing laws have come in various countries as well. And what is greenwashing, right? Very simply put together, think about me saying, I run 100 kilometers. Now, Savan bhai pakad lenge mere ko. What? 100 kilometers. In how many days or how many years? तो ठीक है, बोल दिया मैंने, बट ये मैराथन के साथ बात करूंगा, राइट? पीयूष के साथ करूंगा जो 40-45 किलोमीटर दौड़ता था, पकड़ा जाऊंगा मैं, राइट? It has to be relevant, right? Greenwashing is nothing but please make claims, but be practical about it. It should be relevant to your sector, starting point. And then people will catch you. They will look at 3-year trend and see whether you have done anything around it or not. That's greenwashing. Laws have come and penalties have come. If you Google greenwashing guidance in Australia, amazing guidance how to avoid greenwashing. US, Europe, the penalties have come. So you can't just talk about and say, oh, I've run 100 kilometers. I cannot. And that's a classic. Just people have to be a little careful, you know. And whoever is married is very careful anyway, what to say, what not to say, but let's not go there. That's for some other day, right? But on a serious note, BRSR core, right? So this slide we put in together today, and thanks to Amishi and Piyush, and they said we should have one slide on BRSR core. Look, why this is important? For 3 reasons. You see this gliding scale in terms of the reporting assurance timeline, the gliding scale from 23-24 to 26-27. That's one, right? And right from 150 listed companies to 1,000 listed companies with getting reasonable assurance. It's a sliding scale, gliding scale. Then you see what are some of the BRSR core KPIs. So 9 attributes is a subset of 9 attributes of BRSR. And honestly, if you see anything there, can I tell you, I have been working on those parameters for exact 18 years now. I was calculating. Nothing is new. I've been helping companies on D&I. Forget what companies. In my consulting where I work, I took it from X to Y. Right? So it's about, I was working, I should say. So what I'm trying to say, tell me, greenhouse gas emissions, scope 1 and 2, water, energy, circularity related to waste management, right? Employee well-being and safety, gender diversity, inclusiveness, fairness in engaging suppliers, principle 1 basically, and openness of business, principle 1, governance. I'll cover governance very quickly. Some of the confusion companies have that ESG governance is corporate governance. Yes and no. What is ESG governance? And you explained, sir, Savan bhai explained. ESG governance is very simple. I always say in my team, not to the businesses, who's who in the zoo of the world of sustainability, right? It's complex. What it means, who is looking after environment? Who is looking after social? What is their background? The board understands it. CXOs understand it. What kind of training they have done, right? Maker-checker mechanism on reporting, right? That's governance. That's ESG governance. And that's definitely be part of your corporate governance. That's exactly. So who's who responsible? Do we have the right people? And CFOs play a massive role in it. Massive, massive role. And I'll prove with one statement. I was working for this large hotel chain with the company secretary on BRSR. I got a call from the CFO saying, I'm not going to sign it, Shailesh, if you don't come and sit down with me. I said, absolutely, yeah, let's do it. And glad we did it. But then I realized every single CFO wants to know that. Why they want to know? And I have a slide on it, I'll cover that. But because that's basically strategic, operate, and reporting comes into them. That's their role. Now, why Indian companies we lacked? Look, if you see, I could have made, this can be a presentation in itself, what we have there, literally. But what is happening, think about Indian operations, think about global operations, and then think about how these are aligned in terms of impact, right? I'm not going to work in isolation. If I'm working in India and I'm listed, I need to report. If I'm linked to a listed company through a value chain, either I'm providing something to them as a supplier or taking something from them, maybe I'm not listed, I'll be asked for that information. Or if you see, when you are looking into, and then if assurance requirement, of course, so you need to be careful what you are providing. But if you look at CSRD, double materiality already covered. It has scope 3. And I said scope 3 is a beast, and I'm going to talk about it. Mandatory assurance, which we have here as well. But then CBAM, product carbon footprint. On your carbon, I said it's carbon, on your product. You have a product, entity, embodied carbon life cycle assessment on that. You know, I don't make it technical, but you know, life cycle assessment is also there in BRSR. What it is, I'll prove by experience, you know, it's my experience of working on a project. Think about a company called Woodside Petroleum in Australia, and I'm talking to them, and then I realized that they want a life cycle assessment, but when the product comes out of Karatha at the northern tip of Australia and comes to Southeast Asia, they want entire life cycle assessment. Why would you like to do that? When you burn that fuel at the point of consumption you want to prove, it's still clean. Yeah, you can only do it through life cycle assessment, isn't it? Otherwise, how will you do? Because it's basically whole the transportation, right? It's LNG, right? How you're really looking into those things. So those things. And finally, US. Now, SEC climate disclosure, which have come, again talk about the same. Materiality, but climate risk assessment as well. Finally, supply chain. And that, you definitely would be interested in that, right? So Amishi and I were looking at this slide. Amishi said, oh, financial services 100%. You know why? Why she said that? She said, because financial services is something called they finance emissions. They provide money, right? And I said, because they provide money, they finance, right? Otherwise, operations are not much. It's not a coal mine. It's not oil and gas refinery, but they're the providers of funds. But if you see that way, you will get to know the supply chain emissions are responsible for 73% of emissions from few select industries. What it means? These are the companies who are absolutely required to look at net zero. Have a plan, that waterfall diagram I explained. Look at energy efficiency, new energy, renewables, everything, you know? And whatever is left, carbon markets. India is coming up with their own carbon market now. If you read, you know, and Pat and all, it's another, we can have another session on it some other day, but that's something, so much happening there. The other message from this is, when they require for information, it's the time for MSME first to understand some aspects of BRSR to start with, core, energy, water, how to measure, in what format it's required, what the KPI required, right? So understanding of BRSR. And partnering with their value chain to report. Because the collaboration should happen, right? And it will happen. Because if I need something from you, you say, sorry, I don't have it. It has to be a partnership, right? The other thing, if you see, for MSMEs, and for some, I always say SMEs, right? You know, so in my head, coming from different geography. But if you see this slide, and in this slide we have made it on purpose like this. One is drive to embrace ESG. So it's not just regulatory push, investor push, customer push. It's they want to do good in sustainability. Because, let me give you an example. I've worked with so many MSMEs. They call me up and say, I want to use sustainability as a value driver. Point out differentiation for my company, right? I have this company, technology firm, which joins kiranas in remote locations, last mile delivery. That's a business case for sustainability. I said, absolutely. Can you measure social impact? The project we did in Pune, technology, how you link, classic, right? A company in automobile sector, large in Pune, but pushed by larger players to make an impact. So they want to impress. The second is increase customer demand on ESG integration. Customers are asking, right? What are you doing on that? It may be piecemeal information, but they don't have it. It may not be holistically looking at ESG performance. They only want 5 parameters. For example, if you go to Australia, modern slavery, human rights, big ticket items. How you really know it's not happening in certain sectors, right? Of course, certain sectors I mentioned. It's not talking about everything, but the piecemeal information will come and you have no idea how you provide that. I remember a company, I'm working in a chemical sector, and they told me, you have to help me improve your EcoVadis rating. I said, why? Oh, I will lose my orders, Shailesh, if it doesn't go to this level. How will you improve your rating? I call it black box of ESG rating, improving your rating. And I wrote actually, very quickly, I was working for a company, and they asked me, on a single day, I'm rated at two opposite ends by two different rating agencies. I didn't have the answer. So I had to join hands with a Melbourne-based partner, Sri Lankan friend of mine, and we wrote a piece. If you Google it, Journal of Wealth Management, black box of ESG ratings. We had to write that piece to understand why these rating agencies are so ambiguous. But now, these rating agencies are doing a great job, in my opinion. That's my opinion. Morgan Stanley Composite Index, MSCI, is a rating agency, MSCI, MESCI. They did a 4-year study in developed markets and developing markets. And they linked ESG rating, ESG performance to cost of capital. Just Google it, you will understand. It has a risk management, and all the 4 pillars. It's in public domain. Amazing report. Any questions, ask me. It's just brilliant, right? So you improve your performance, link it to cost of capital, right? And both in developed and developing markets. So enough there, right? Now, on the value chain side, of course, the usual, the stuff we have already covered, but we have segmented it, what they expect on E, S, and G, right? And if you see this, according to DBS, at Bloomberg Media Studio survey, 92% of Indian SMEs agreed that the influence of the global value chain, including vendors, suppliers, and customers, is a powerful ESG adaptation driver. Look, I hate quoting, usne isna bola, usne aise bola. Let me tell you one thing. Nowadays, gone are the days that you have to prove to people that you need to control the narrative on ESG. Only one learning from this, doesn't matter company or which size, you have to control the narrative. You know why? Every single company which is in public domain, not even listed, a Bloomberg analyst, and once upon a time it was my cousin, he's sitting in Austria, is analyzing your company, comparing to companies, giving reports to the very customer you're going to tomorrow interact. I had the Bloomberg portal access. If you ever meet me separately, I'll show you where your company is on ESG. Very clear how they look at it. So it's real, it's happening, right? And they don't wait for you to provide information. They pick it up from your financial report, YouTube interviews, hopefully not Instagram, but definitely LinkedIn, Glassdoor surveys. They pick it up without you don't have a choice. Right. Now, let's see what is the solution, right? How you really look into embedding ESG, how you go about it, right? Look, this slide basically, I actually jump one slide if you allow me, and I know Piyush won't like this because his favorite slide. But I'll cover these 2 slides. Piyush, the gentleman sitting here, is the smart manager I was talking about. Look, how we go about it, please. Sustainability, we used to work in sustainability in piecemeal manner. Savan bhai will call me and say, he's a senior partner, right? He calls me up and say, Shailesh, this client of mine in chemical sector needs this rating improvement. The other day he would say that client in the IT sector needs control on their data centers, right? Piecemeal is problem, specific problem. Then we realize some company will say, hey, listen, do materiality assessment. Come and help us, what's important for us. Someone will say, help us with financial raise. I'm doing so well in ESG, it has to be linked to my cost of capital. Someone would say, just write a report. I've done enough, right? We said, okay. Then people like the three people sitting here in my team were smarter than me, the next gen. They came up with this idea. Why we don't do end-to-end solution? Literally, people like them came up. They said end-to-end. I said, what do you mean? He said, let's use technology. Let's give insight to this company against 14,000 odd companies in specific areas so they don't have to go through the pain with pockets of excellence, right? And specific ideas called intelligence, benchmarking, whatever you call it, risk intelligence. Once you have done that, let's do holistic stakeholder engagement using technology. Not चिट्ठी नहीं लिखनी है. Sorry, सबको लिखना नहीं है. Use technology to engage with people who matter. right? Think about how we are impacting the environment and how the environment is impacting us, both ways. Once we have done that, okay, let's come up, based on that, let's come up with a strategy, a policy. So the rating agencies are very, very happy. There is a strategy, there is a policy. The policy is what Savan was talking about, right? Same. Let's come up with that. Let's come up with short and medium term intervention. What I'm going to do, 3x3 metrics, not the world, because when I say 100 things, I never do anything. That one thing I'm going to do, same concept applies. Once you have done that, what I'm working towards, the long-term ambition. And then let's write this in a report. Because the world should know, but in a concise report. Now, Shakespeare said, it's my favorite quote, brevity is the soul of wit. Keep it short, keep it precise, right? And I always give this example, it's not Hawa mein. Even before I landed, I got a call from the biggest company in India that, have you read our report? Maybe the biggest, or one of the biggest. I said, yeah. How can I make this report precise, concise, to the point, forward-looking? And that company's last 3-year report, I literally drove that project, even if at this age, because there are a lot of people who can do better job than me. But we did it in the firm because we wanted to report, we want to control the narrative. So reporting is very, very powerful, right? And then ratings, decarbonization, I can use these fancy terms, which my team loves to use, but ultimately you do, how you go about it. So you do ESG intelligence to benchmarking materiality. You come up with a strategy, you'd have a target setting, right? Very, very important, absolutely important, right? What are your aspiration, policies, goals, activities, intervention, data management, maker-checker mechanism, use of technology, periodic monitoring. Savan bhai will say, board meeting hai meri, send me a Power BI dashboard. Precise, I will, I have to. So that's the way it would be, right? Rating agencies. Now one, the black box. There's so many rating agencies. Do we really understand which rating agency? What are the 4 ones? So you know what we did? In fact, it wasn't me, and again, I'm embarrassing this man, Piyush. You know what he did? Smart guy. He sat down with Dr. Raymond Tiwari, and taking these names, smart guy, again, child prodigy, UPSC, first attempt, IIMs, amazing guy. He leads our pharma and chem work. They both sat down and came to me and said, sir, we have decoded all the rating agencies. See this pyramid, in 16 elements and 64 parameters, if a company improves, their foundation on 99% of rating agencies is fixed. I'm like, oh. So I went home, called my wife and said, I'm working with smarter people than me. She works for Reserve Bank, smarter than me. Quoted some Steve Jobs quote. Let's not go there. But the point is, this is where it is. Solutions are there. If you need help, let us know, right? Heaps of these rating agencies. Now, these rating agencies are all different. Left-hand side are disclosure framework, reporting frameworks in different countries. SASB, as I said, would be required by due diligence by investors. GRI is the mother of reporting requirement. A lot of people even interchangeably use GRI report, sustainability report, right? Global Reporting Initiative. Started as a framework, now is a standard, have been in 3 launches of GRI, but I love GRI. Anything on a report, you need a KPI, it's a Bible, you can pick it up. That can be a foundation of reporting. Like in financial, you have IFRS. Now IFRS and sustainability is coming together through IFRS S1 and S2. So Sri Lanka, it's already started. So I'm doing a lot of work in Sri Lanka as an example on sustainability and climate change and how you're looking into it. So it's all colliding the reporting framework on the left-hand side. Rating agencies I already covered, but ultimately all rating agencies focus on different things, not on everything. So stress is different. Finally, CFOs. After that, I'll pass it on to Amishi. Look, I have a lot of respect for CFOs, right? Thrice I was offered the role of a CEO. I have worked for 2 years as CEO of a company, startup. But this role ultimately is about running the business, is about those 4 capitals I mentioned. He's not just looking at lose people, you're in trouble, right? The world is coming down on managing the impact. Google, Rio Tinto example. What happened with Aboriginal sites in Australia? What happened with the CEO? Just Google it and see. That's the kind of impact the world has on the CEOs. He may or may not be directly involved, but those are the examples, right? Because ultimately you are responsible for the strategy, for the policies, for the impact, for the operations, configure and operate, and you disclose. Something you report, not proper scrutiny, not audit done, you are in trouble. So this they have been doing forever, right? So they act as catalyst, strategist, stewards, and operator. Now think about these and think about sustainability. We have given examples there. How you strategize and measure, what to measure, is materiality assessment. What's material? How you integrate your business strategy and sustainability strategy. How you combine the two. What are the KPIs you report? They decide. Because you can't report everything. You don't want to create a 500-page document. You cannot create, right? You want that. And then, of course, the risk side of it. Because you mentioned ESG risk and how they look into it. So the team has very smartly put together all the three verticals, what exactly it is, right? That's what it is. Very important. Now with that, what I'll do, I'll pass it on to Amishi, and I tell you why. Look, a lot of people in India, including me, are experts in terms of, so, okay, think about, someone calls me and say, I want to do green bonds assurance. Do you understand? I said, yes. Okay. What different kind of instruments you have? Do you know? Yeah, I do, and I literally do. If someone comes and tells me, I've improved the performance, help this performance improvement to raise my capital. Very few people can do, trust me. Savan bhai can do it, I'm telling you. Amishi can definitely do it, right? And that's what she's gonna cover, putting her, I would say, financial expert hat. So think about ESG and financial services hat. Over to you, Amishi, please.
Shailesh, thank you. I think I'm hoping that everyone so far has really understood the entire context of what ESG is. And I think there's no one better than to explain than Shailesh. I think he did brilliantly. And I'm hoping that you also have a lot of questions for us at the end of this session. You know, one of the reasons, you know, you saw that I've been a capital markets person where I've helped companies, over 150 companies, list on our national stock exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange. And so that's where my expertise had been. But last couple of years, when I used to take these companies to meet up with investors globally, right, who invest money, and when, like as retail investors, you and I can invest. Then we have HNIs and corporates who invest in an IPO, but we also have institutional investors who invest, right, like our mutual funds, insurance companies, and global investors. More and more, when I used to take companies abroad, there used to be questions that used to come exactly on this ESG, that what is your company, how is it aligned to the environmental, social, and governance factors? And let me tell you that, honestly, that the companies would look at us as bankers and we were as clueless, because in India, we were still grappling with what ESG is all about. And that's when my interest came up, that you see fundraising is more and more linked to ESG, because obviously none of the global investors are going to come into companies which probably are somewhere not having a clean tick mark to any of these factors that, you know, Shailesh had highlighted on various fronts, and that's when the compliance and reporting and everything came up. Anyway, so long and short, I said that, look, I can't become an environmental engineer, can I? No, after being in finance for so long. But what I can do is help companies raise green finance, which is a kind of new concept in India. It's well, you know, done in the developed countries, particularly the European Union, UK, US has seen including other emerging markets like Chile, Peru. All of them have actually taken up green finance as one of the really, you know, ways of ensuring that they have, you know, we keep reading about it in the newspapers, that how much money is going to be required for the entire transition to happen, right? The transition finance. And that's when, you know, we realized that in India, we haven't actually looked at these avenues of raising green money, which could be a lot of different instruments that the developed countries or even other developing nations have used. I can talk about green bond as one, but it's also sustainability linked bonds, you know, a lot of thematic linked bonds, blue water bonds, which is basically money used to ensure clean up rivers or the oceans, or sustainability linked loans. And, you know, we've been talking to the banks to see how we can, you know, get these innovative instruments into our financial system, to see how can we start this, and companies can use SLLs or SLBs to kind of take money and start their transition, whether it is on the energy fund, putting up a solar, you know, renewable energy, whatever, right? So that's where the background is about why sustainable finance and green finance in particular. And this slide is basically talking very clearly that today, lot of M&A transaction, and I'm not repeating something that Shailesh has already said, that ESG due diligence is being done so much. If today you have a company and there's a buyer, we do the buyer DD, right, before they invest or give money, and we've seen a lot of transaction fall off because they don't comply on very, very basic things. So today, in every financial decision, ESG is now getting very clearly incorporated. And financial decisions I'm talking about, and that's clearly what this slide is talking about, whether you are on the buy side or the sell side, somewhere ESG is going to play more and more an important role. And as a CFO, if you're looking at buying companies, or if you're looking at spinning off your units, or even if you're talking about listing, any of it, the ESG integration is a must. And somewhere that's what, we've started doing this in Deloitte, helping companies at every stage. And I think Shailesh has talked about it in quite so much of detail already. So basically, this slide is, again, we're looking at what are the different players in the market who are going to be involved in this entire ecosystem. So we have our MDBs, which are the multi-development banks. We have the ADBs, we have the World Banks, all of them who have been lending money for the transition. We have our own national development financial institutions, like for MSMEs, it's mostly SIDBI, which has been lending for a lot of renewable companies. It is IREDA, IREDA, which just recently got listed in last August, September. All of these are domestic financial institutions, which are basically lending for, or giving money for, and this is mostly through debt. In terms of equity, that is where it's going to get more interesting. So we have not seen too much of equity flows that has gone into the transition finance or the sustainable finance as yet in India. It is happening, but it's happening in pockets. And one clear is the valuation, right? Because investors on the equity side look at valuations. Debt today is probably an easier way to raise this money, is because obviously there are frameworks that have been put into place through which companies can raise that money, and then investors clearly go through the life cycle of what you have committed as your KPIs in part of the framework, and it also tells you, they also ask you to take a second party or a third party opinion to ensure greenwashing isn't done. Greenwashing is, again, something which Shailesh had mentioned. Greenwashing is, you say you're doing something, but you're actually not doing it, in terms of, like, if you have said that we're installing solar panels, very, very basic but of so many kilowatts, but you're doing half of it. That's called greenwashing. But you've raised funds for the entire thing. So those things are happening on the debt side. So debt is still simpler in terms of green finance, but equity is now starting off in a big way. We've seen a lot of equity money flowing into clean tech companies, which are actually, the innovations that are happening today in our country. A lot of money actually is flowing into that than just normal renewable projects. So we were talking about the players. Here we are talking about the kind of finance that is available. And very clearly in green, we're looking at blended finance. A lot of, our Namami Gange project, the cleaning of the Ganges, is a beautiful blended finance project that the government has got. And you have the World Bank, ADB entities who have invested. The government has invested, and there are certain private players who have invested. Now, what happens in these, there are no clear returns that, if you're putting money in an IPO, that the stock would list, if you put in at 100, maybe at 150, and the stock price goes up, right? There is a clear indication of what kind of returns can come in. But in these green projects, it's very, very difficult. Like, Namami Gange project, how do you calculate returns, right? So it's not the classic way of calculating returns, but very importantly, there are, they give you performances. If you achieve so much, this is what you'll get. If you achieve so much, this is what you get. Blended finance is where it comes in, because a lot of equity investors, if they want to invest in green finance, then they want to ensure that they don't make a loss on such projects. And that's when these multilateral agencies or the government gives that kind of guarantee. We call it the first loss guarantee, that if at all this project doesn't make kind of money that we're thinking it will, we'll ensure that you have the basic interest and the capital return. So that's called blended finance here. I was talking about private equity, venture capital, lot of interest coming in into these innovations, new, clean tech space, which is again hugely required for this entire transition for us to happen towards net zero, as we are saying. So money is flowing in India. There's no dearth of ideas, and we do have these private equity, venture capital funds who are actually willing to invest in these companies. So if there's anything on the other side that you think, we could look at the private equity funding, and it's just beginning in this space. So a lot of interest getting generated now. We're talking about green debt, and I said that, green debt could be also the green deposits that the banks have started off, right? If you see, most of the public sector banks have started taking green deposits, which are clearly earmarked for certain things that they want to do, whether it could be wastewater, renewable. There are these certain parameters that they can raise. So they've started green deposits. The banks have done that. Green bonds is something that I was talking to you about. It's one of the instruments that has really taken off so well in developed as well as developing countries. And I'm hoping, so a lot of companies in India have raised green bonds, but they're all dollar denominated. So they've listed on our Gandhinagar GIFT City IFC exchange. So we have a lot of international investors who've invested in green bonds. Adani has done it. Reliance, you have banks which have raised green bonds. But my wish, and I know this because I've seen in our equity markets, there's no dearth of money in our country where if you're looking at an IPO, get subscribed 40, 50, 100 times, right? So there's no dearth of money here, but green bond as an instrument in INR is something that I'm really, wanting to see how can we kickstart that in our country, that our own funds and our own projects. How do we do that rather than just getting the foreign investors in? And some of the things, and I've actually written an article earlier in Mint also, that how do we mobilize our capital markets to raise green bonds in INR, that is our own currency. And one of the things that I have mentioned is that there has to be better regulations that are the impetus has to come in from the government, maybe as a tax incentive. Like we used to have tax-free bonds, right? Which HUDCO, NHI, all of them had raised. Maybe not tax-free, but some incentives to start the channelizing of money into such instruments is something that can be done. EPFOs, insurance companies, are pension funds. Over $600 billion is lying just like that. Why can't we channelize that to fund our green activities, right? But the right impetus is required. And I think that's something that I really want to kickstart in India, is to see how do we channelize our own money into the green bonds. Plentiful, India has raised a lot of green bonds, but it's all dollar denominated. So that option is always going to be there for companies, but I want to do this the way we list our own equity on our exchanges. Why not our own green bonds? So that's something that is very, very interesting. And of course, asset securitizations. You've seen the InvITs and the REITs, right? And I remember when the first InvIT was coming in India, which is the Infrastructure Investment Trust, I was involved in the first InvIT that was going public. And when I used to go and meet investors, kitla banse when it gets listed, right? That was the question, kitla banse, because we looked at it as a stock. Well, InvIT is a new instrument altogether, right? It doesn't, the returns are never going to be like the equity stock that gets listed. And so again, over here, we want to look at green InvITs. There could be green highways. How do we raise money as a green InvIT? So these are very different, innovative instruments, and that's something that here in India, those can be really options for our companies to raise funds, particularly for our green activities. I think I've already mentioned this. This is the the entire ecosystem. Very interesting. Development, DFIs, these are development banks, multilateral development banks, the global banks. I was talking about the pension funds. All of them have plentiful of money. We are looking at our own financial institutions who can channelize, and then, of course, our banks. Right now, one of the reasons why the green finance instruments have not also taken off is because there is a compliance that one has to do with it, right? The use of proceeds have to be clearly defined. Why are you raising funds? And where are you going to be using these funds? And so there is a third-party assurance, opinion, everything required compared to a bank loan that a bank gives a company for setting up a renewable. But the dictate is coming from the RBI more and more to put these compliances in place for the banks. So when banks have to do that, they start asking the company. So somewhere this has got kick-started already in terms of that, you look at this not just as compliance, because these things have to be done when you're clearly earmarking funds for green investments. I'm going to ask Shailesh, you want to mention on the tech front in terms of how technology is helping? Okay, are we?
Yeah, we'll start taking questions, but thanks, Amishi. So, thank you. Look, while I answer, I'll try to be cheeky. I'll answer your questions. I'll cover tech ESG as well. I'll try. Let's see. Please. So, Mike, yeah, you have. Thanks. Thank you.
Any questions?
Please let us know.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank IIM-A and Savan Bhai for organizing such an important event or session on important topic. And secondly, I would like to appreciate all the speakers for your insightful presentation. It was really very much eye-opener. And I am Dr. Manish Agarwal, CEO of Jivraj Mehta Hospital. I have a question that in healthcare industry, in any hospital, it is a very energy intensive organization, and it generates a good amount of waste, especially biomedical waste. So what shall we do to implement ESG compliances in the healthcare industry without impacting the bill of the patient?
Absolutely.
That's important.
Yeah. So, after long winding, rather than in short, sir, I would like to catch up with you. Because in this pharma, hospitals, chem sector, we work like healthcare, pharma and chem, we're a proper team. And out of 12 companies, 9 we've already done the ESG transformation, if I can name the big ones. But to answer your question very, very quickly, rather than piecemeal going about 2 areas, one is regulatory compliance, which you're already doing what you can. But in this sector specifically, because of the nature of consumption, rather than transforming over a period of 1 year, it's a 5-year journey. And we create a roadmap. We pick up pieces based on first we start from the local, where you are based, what can be done, right? And then we give you better practice over 5 years. So it's a roadmap, sir. And they're specific, but I will call you, I'll make sure, and I'll do it tomorrow. We'll do a call, sir, half an hour, and I'll explain to you exactly what you can do. Be very specific about it. Yeah, no problem. In fact, as we are speaking, you'll be surprised, yesterday, the large player was talking about some M&A in hospital, and I submitted something exactly what you're asking for. So it will be easy. I can talk about it tomorrow.
Shailesh ji, you very well differentiated the difference between the G in ESG and the corporate governance. But still, when we look at the G part in most of the listed companies, they limit governance of ESG only to board of directors, not across the vertical hierarchy. Let's look at in this way, government in India. Government starts with Delhi, to state government, to the district government, to the taluka government, to village government. So governance is applicable throughout the vertical hierarchy. Unfortunately, G in ESG still is limited to the board, the top, not across the vertical hierarchy.
Yeah, no, it's a great question, sir. So what good thing BRSR has done, the requirements BRSR is asking for reporting, and some rating agencies. So one thing which I haven't covered, SEBI in the next few years will come up with their own rating scale. Your report goes in public domain on BRSR, right? Compared, and there'll be a rating scale, right? Look at CRISIL as an example, the already rating companies. So that, I agree, may not be an organized approach on governance yet, but BRSR is already changing that, one. Why you have to change it? You don't have to go and link your performance-based bonus to ESG yet, though it has already happened, sir. Some of the directors in some PSUs, it's already happened in India. But I'm not talking about ESG linked, I'm talking about here a basic organogram, responsibility chart, training program. BRSR is already forcing companies to do that. The change has started to happen, but I hear you, sir. Yeah, a lot more needs to happen. Absolutely.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for your insights, all the speakers. I'm Anvi. I'm a chemical engineer into industrial wastewater treatment.
Yeah.
My question is, a lot of times, so India is a cost-driven market. And as a technology provider, we always have two options on the table, one with low OPEX and CAPEX, but low OPEX but higher CAPEX. So, but industries will always choose the lower CAPEX options.
Sure.
So, a lot of times we try to ask them why, like just go for the lower energy alternative. So we treat water, but we use a lot of energy in that.
Yep.
How do we convince without adding that value in them?
No, your question, Anvi, I mean, a great question. Like, you're a process engineer, I'm a process control engineer, right? So
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Look, please understand, sustainability, I would like to answer your question. Sustainability is not about making a transformative change, and it goes back to the earlier question, over a period of 1 month or 6 months or 1 year, right? Every country, every sector, every technology penetration, and that regulatory push, start with regulatory push, happens over a period of time. India is no different to other countries, right? But it's complex, right? You're talking about regulatory push and how stringent that regulatory push is. You're talking about that, I know. Trust me, with this net zero roadmap 2070, linking down to companies and technology penetration, the only way these people can do it is through technology. So just chill and watch. People will come to you knocking, saying, exactly. So I did a lot of Veolia environmental services and Veolia water as well. Happy to share what we did. But I hear you, I agree, absolutely. It's a journey, it will take time. Thanks. Sir.
We have a last question.
Sure. Sure.
Sir. Good evening. I am Sudhir Prajapati from Bank of Baroda. Our rating is medium and 21.6 is, we are top 30 and we are doing a lot of things with our investors also. But what Madam has hit the nail when she says ki a lot of green bond also not subscribed. Recently SBI has said just they are able to raise only 10 crore rupees. While Bank of Baroda is in much better position, we were able to mobilize 120 crores. So the investors' maturity in this field is very much required. And apart from that, what we are doing is basically adding more waste, like solar panel, like batteries in all our these mobiles and laptops. So when it comes in a recycle stage, like 26 onward, there will be a starting of inflow of the batteries in EVs that needs to be recycled again. So are we not adding more pollution or like that in a new form?
So there's a reason I don't drive an EV, but you haven't heard this from me. No. On a serious note, very quickly, and Amishi, if you want to answer, but the first bit. On the first bit, before I go to Amishi, things may not have started to happen in India, absolutely. But one observation I had, I gave this media interview, should come in August, in Sri Lanka. And I realized that if you look at what really happened in Sri Lanka with the economy was all due to basically I call it working capital, but anyway, right? Sorry. Why it happens, sir? And then look at how much money they need to come back to the party. And then just Google and what happened in Indonesia around sustainable finance. What kind of money was raised? Just do me a favor, just compare the two, so you'll see the potential. May not be happening yet in India. Amishi explained it so well, but I don't look at it from that lens. I have a different view. Amishi is a hardcore banker. You're from banks, sir. I did a lot of work. IndusInd Bank, HDFC, SBI, all are my clients. I've done a lot of work, currently working. The whole SBI finance emission work, sir, I'm doing, so entire. But if you ask me, my way of looking at it is different, this world of sustainable finance. One way is looking at it from Amishi's practical lens, your lens. My lens is different. If you improve your ESG performance, absolutely you can link it to your cost of capital. Now you're talking about raising money, refinancing, how much money? Yes, but the world is going, it will definitely help you in terms of raising the money easier and from different sources. More and more these avenues will come with this integrated reporting requirements we have. So that's my view, but you're right. I'm not gonna, Amishi, unless.
Green deposits, right? I know. Green deposits overall has not taken off. One, you're right. The education itself is very poor currently, right? Where the awareness for us as individuals, for as corporates, as that itself, that investor education process is still far away. That we have to do so much on the ground. And again, as I was mentioning, right, this green deposit has a compliance attached to it today. So that is where the slow, it's been slow in terms of really ensured, the banks I feel that it's an additional burden to them compared to any other fixed deposit. Plus, if you look at the interest, there's not much difference there. So I guess that's one of the reasons why this whole green deposit thing hasn't taken off. But as I said, banks after a certain time will need to do this because the nudge is coming from the regulators. And once you have to start doing, you will, it's the cycle, right? One pushes the other, and then it becomes a mindset change. Look, the whole thing is about mindset change that we need to look at. We've all only been governed by profits, and profits. Somewhere in one of the slides we were talking about that there is a triple, you have to look at profits, people, and planet. Right, so the triple P effect has to happen. It's a mindset change required in all of us. And someone was talking about what we need to do for the next generation. We've had this whole classic case of tragedy of horizons. My grandparents thought that it'll be my parents' generation which will take care of it. They thought that it'll be us, but now we can't give this to our next generation because that'll be so unfair. And I was telling Shailesh and Piyush both that we are facing the effects of climate change. We are the first generation to face it and the last generation to do anything about it. So a major mindset change is required in each and every one of us, starting from the boats to the common man, because everyone's life is going to get affected. No one's going to get spared. So with that, I would like to end, and thank you, Shailesh.
No, absolutely. And your question on, sir, EV very quickly is coming through life cycle assessment. And you're so right. Extended producer responsibility, a lot is happening in that world. And we can talk about it offline. Yes, a lot more needs to happen. My solution is hybrid, not EVs, but it's my view. But yeah.
Hello. Thank you, sir, for insightful insights. Sir, my name is Digvijay. Just currently working in manufacturing sector. So just I would like to share some insights. So, sir, India is an agriculture market is up to 53% are working on agriculture sector. Yeah. So, sir, there is any footprint related to that? Can be help to India? Any reports are available? So how they are achieving the ESG report sustainability also might be calculated or not. Yeah. So there will be vast impact on it.
Yeah. So there's a lot of work has happened in that sector. So I recently received an award with the Millet Man, of India, and I remember I learned a lot. One, for that sector, again, sir, materiality comes in. It's an overall footprint in what? Water, productivity. Exactly. That work is already being done. It's in public domain, right? And companies are already using that to sell products. So that's more of a marketing thing. So a lot of work has happened. But think about that from the sustainability side for farmers and all. So that sector is very akin to the ethanol sector, the sugar sector, same concept, right? and I think we are doing so much with ISMA as one example, as a metaphor. That's the impact side of it. So one is footprinting, the other is opportunities in that, and how you will bring everyone together. So lot of reports are there. If you're asking about reports, happy to guide you, sir. That's enough material in that. Absolutely. But that's a complex sector, because there's water, and it also has that food security. So yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, friends. I think we also need another session, because he has forgotten a subject which is directly linked to my industry. So technology end-to-end for ESG. So we'll have that session, and request Savan bhai cake fari organize karjo. Yeah. So thank you all, and thank you Amishi and Savan bhai and all, that we are really very delighted that they both shared very useful information. And as a SME, I'll also request Savan bhai, we should have specific session for SME sector, because when I put ESG slide on my corporate profile, nobody bothered to see that slide, because they think that MSME is not entitled to follow ESG. So, and we all require those information and knowledge. So thank you all, and thank you all for, yes, the very important thing. Please do fill up that feedback form so that we can come with relevant sessions in future. Thank you.